Hey, hi, hello, and welcome to the show. My name is DDare Bionic, if you did not know, and I am black with a brand new video. So I'm sitting here wondering what I'm going to talk about in this video. And I think, I've had a couple different ideas bounce around in my head. And I think today the topic is my work at St. Louis Public Radio. Now, I won't, unless y'all really, really want me to, I won't go too in depth with what I did on the back end of things. Though it is very interesting and very cool to know and understand and talk about. But I specifically want to talk about the work that I actually did as a producer for St. Louis on the Air, which was really cool and really exciting and an opportunity that I couldn't believe came to me so readily. It was very exciting. It was an incredible experience. I'm excited to continue working there. But I am still looking for full-time employment. So if you got a job, drop it in the comments below. But anyway, let's get into, let's just talk about the internship itself. So I started in May of 2025, a week after the tornado that hit St. Louis and completely ravaged parts of North City and a little bit of Del Mar and Clayton area, but really, really just completely, almost completely flatlined North City. And that's a topic for another time because there are things that I do not like or appreciate that are happening with North City. And we're going to get into that another time. But I want to talk about some of the segments that I produced over my time there. So I started in May of 2025. Like I said, I ended just a little under a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. In January, the beginning of January was my last week there as a full-time intern. And then I transitioned to a temporary part-time position working with the new music stuff. So I am technically still working there. I pop in once a month, I produce a segment, and then I write a web story, and then I leave. That's my gig. But while I was there, I produced 29 segments, I believe. Let me look. Hold on, because I brought everything with me. Obviously, I have a portfolio. 30 segments. 30? Yeah. Because that technically is the first co-produced. Yes, 30 segments produced by moi, or co-produced that I worked with someone else on. And I wrote 30 something web stories. I'm scrolling on the page right now. And I just want to highlight some of my favorite work because I'm on this journey of activism and using my voice and my platform, what little platform I have, and my art and my music to tell stories and to advocate for those who don't have a voice and who can't advocate for themselves, and also to uplift messages and ideas and stories that haven't been uplifted or talked about at all. But I also want to highlight some of the little things that were kind of highlights for me during my internship. So I'm going to start at the beginning. One of the first things that I did was this fried chicken fight, which was really fun. It was a really cool first experience of cutting together a little montage to put into the show and eating a bunch of fried chicken. I co-produced this with the host and wrote the web story for it. And it was just a lot of fun. It was a fun, real first dive into journalism. So combining some of my favorite stuff, food. I love food. Y'all already know I love food. And fried chicken. And storytelling and audio editing. It was my first time kind of doing all those things. So that was one of the first stories I really, really worked on. And then after that, I have this really quick turnaround story that was we needed something for a short segment for a Monday, I think. And I got this turned around and booked on a Friday. It was boom, bam, boom. I sent the message and it was booked. It was crazy. But it's about sunflowers. If you know anything about St. Louis, or if you're from St. Louis, there is the Missouri, what is it? I can just click on Missouri and see. The Missouri Department of Conservation, Columbia Bottom Conservation Area. They have fields and fields and fields and fields of sunflowers in the springtime. And people love to go out there and take photos. I myself have taken photos at the Columbia Bottom sunflower fields. And so it was a really quick turnaround story. It was really interesting. It was fun to do that. But that was just kind of a highlight for me because I was new still. This was only, this was only like a month into my internship, 2 months into my internship. And it was supposed to be a 3-month internship. So I was supposed to be done in August, and they asked me in like June, July to extend my internship into the fall. And so that's why I went to January, because apparently I was doing a really good job. But after that is my first Hallmark story. I am 100%. This segment and story are the first time at STLPR and with St. Louis on the Air that I produced a full show. So the show is an hour of content. I booked 6 guests. Was it 6? 6 guests? 3 in the A? Or was it 5? I think it was 5 guests. Either way, we break the show up into segments. So there's, however many different segments, but it was all like one cohesive story. So I was telling the story about trees and how the trees have been destroyed and how there's this like fear of trees and like the spirituality and the connection with earth and the like woo-woo side of trees, which y'all already know I'm very woo-woo. And then I was also telling the story of like the physical tree. Okay, these trees are gone. What does that mean for our ecosystem in St. Louis? What does that mean for the animals? What does that mean for the humans? What does that mean for the people in these neighborhoods who live in mostly brick houses? Like how does all of that correlate to each other? And my mentor, Kate, was also working on a story about trees. So we collaborated on this web story. I will say she did the bulk of the writing. Like she wrote most of the good stuff for the web story. She's an excellent writer. She's an excellent reporter. Shout out to her. And it was really cool to collaborate with her on this as a colleague after having been mentored by her. But yeah, it just was an amazing and exciting full hour of content about trees. And it came out exactly how I wanted it to be. Like the first half of the show was all about, what do trees mean to neighborhoods? What do trees mean for society? How does St. Louis handle trees? Are the trees going to be replanted? All these things that like we think about, but we don't think about. And, proper tree care and like how to keep the trees on your property living for a long time and like trees that outlive us because trees are going to outlive us. It was really, really beautiful and impactful in a like physical reality grounded, no pun intended, sense in that first half of the show. And then the second half of the show was the more woo-woo side of it. So it was more about, the spirituality of it, the connection that we have with trees, the fact that this storm and many storms in the past have, created this fear in a lot of people of trees because, a tree might fall on your house, a tree might fall on your car, on you. And these lovely round table of Black women came on to talk about just their work with trees and spirituality and helping to reestablish that connection with earth and with trees and with self and healing that tree trauma. And it just was so inspiring to me, because I got to bring Black women in to talk about, trees and the environment there, and not only Black women, but like, it just was really important and special to me because North City is a historically Black neighborhood. It's all mostly Black people who are greatly affected by the tornado, and to bring on voices of the people to talk about these trees and how to heal from that trauma, but also what the city is going to do about it was great. So that was really, really important and impactful. And I'm very proud of that story. It's especially for it to have been my first full hour of content. It was a little nerve wracking because I'm like, oh my God, do I have enough? Did I do enough prep? But yeah, it turned out really well. And it is easily in my top three favorite stories. And I think you will see very quickly what my three favorite stories are. So then we move on to another really, really cool moment. So the internship is tailored to how you want it. What you want to come in and learn, that's what they're gonna, assist you in and guide you to. So I am a podcast host. Obviously, I host Mental Health Chat Monday. I also co-host Avengers Disassemble with my good friend Jeremy. I have had podcasts in the past. I had Urban Proper Podcast with my very good friend Sheesh. And so I'm used to hosting. I'm used to having conversations and interviewing and doing these things. And it's called a contributed segment. And that was really what I was working toward, to do at least one during my internship. So the first one was with a queer horror comic. Actually, hold on a second. So this first contributed segment that I did, and yes, I said first because I did more than one, was with Lori Jameson, who is a comic book artist, and they were based here in St. Louis. They have relatively recently, but they wrote these horror comics. And y'all know I love horror, obviously, and I love graphic art and comics. And so these queer stories, I have all four of these here in their Nightshade series. And it was really cool to kind of highlight that queer art and also to, shine some light on what the city of St. Louis has to offer as far as comics. Like, let me just show you. Like, beautiful. The color stories, everything about these are amazing. So my favorite one, I believe, is Rabbit Hole. Yeah, I love this one. They're all so good, but Rabbit Hole is so good. I'm just remembering. I'm going to have to read these again because it's been a second since I read them. Like, look at this. Oh, my God. I bought these with my own money. I did pledge to Lori's Kickstarter and purchased all four of these with my own money. I was very happy to do that because I met them at an event where I was displaying some fashions and they were displaying their art. And we just kind of had a conversation and I was like, I'm going to lock this in my brain for maybe a future segment at STLPR. And it turned out that it was a perfect segment for STLPR. Lori was an amazing guest. They were so excited to do it and I was so excited to interview them. And I even got to inject a little bit of myself into the interview because I started the interview with riboflavin flavored, non-carbonated, polyunsaturated blood, one of my favorite songs. Yeah, it was great. So it was cool to be kind of the person sitting behind the desk, asking the questions and interviewing someone who is really cool and really amazing. And I will link to Lori's Instagram down low so you can see their work and what they do. They are incredible. And they're also just a really nice and sweet human being. So shout out to Lori. Listen, I'm going to hype my friends up however I can. My friend Chan, who has been on the channel, you will see him in this episode of Mental Health Chat Monday. I got a lot of stuff to put in this video. This edit's going to take me forever. But my friend Chan has this series called They Call Me a Sellout, which I will link down below as well. Which is now transitioning to being called the Gradient Scale. Yes, the Gradient Scale. But it's a series about Black people in rock and roll. And Black people literally invented rock and roll. But now we're called a sellout because of, all the politics and whatever and blah, 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 blah. But Chan, I was able to bring him on to talk about his series and his work as an artist. And it was really cool to, bring him on and talk to him about it. I didn't interview him. He was interviewed by the host, but it was, it was a great interview. I'm laughing because the next story on the page that I'm looking at is about monkeys. And I did a reel right before I on my last day because there were monkeys on the loose in St. Louis. Child, that's a whole other thing for another time. And next we move on to some really, really interesting stuff. I'm going to highlight this one. I mean, I've done a lot of stuff. I did something about geocaching. Fairground Park in St. Louis, it used to be like this huge, gorgeous, glorious park and has been dilapidated for many years. And there's a new organization called Fairground Park for All that is rehabilitating it. And I did a story about that. Soul on Fire, the John O'Leary film. It's a biopic about John O'Leary. My partner and I were both in the film. And John O'Leary came on St. Louis on the Air. Here's a photo of John O'Leary and I think it's me and John O'Leary. I don't remember who's in the photo. It might be Elaine. I don't know. But here's a photo. And if I can't find the photo, I won't put it up. But I'll say here's a photo. But yeah, John O'Leary came on. This was another full show of content. He came on to talk about the film. He also came on to talk about, you know, his life story. And if you don't know who John O'Leary is, when he was like 9 years old, he burned himself up playing with gasoline. He had a really long road to recovery. He, you know, was shouted out by Jack Buck and all these other things. And he has a really magnificent story and a really impactful and powerful story. And he really is just like a really sweet person. He really is very genuine. And he didn't know that, because the movie filmed, I believe in 2021 or 2022, I can't remember, but it filmed a long time ago. 22, it would have been 22, because 21 was still pandemic times. I mean, we're still in pandemic, but whatever. But he was on set and he like played piano, and he met everybody, shook everybody's hands on set. I remember that, very vividly remember we met him on set. But of course he does many things and he talks to thousands of people regularly. And so when he came to the station, and I said nothing when I was reaching out to the people and contacting them, and you know, I went to the premiere. Here I am at the premiere with my partner, and you know, I saw myself in the film, saw my partner in the film. My partner is pretty heavily featured in the film, which is really cool. But when he came on, our host Elaine was like, yeah, you know, producer Darius Varner was in the film, and he was like, after the interview, he was like, you didn't say you were in the film. I was like, it wasn't about that. It wasn't about me being in the film. But it was really cool to have him come on and talk about his story and talk about the film, and also about bringing filmmaking back to St. Louis. It's been a long time since a major film had been made in St. Louis, and Soul on Fire was the first one in in like 15 years or something, I think. 15 or 10 or 15 years, something like that. Soul on Fire is the first film to be made in St. Louis, not about St. Louis, in St. Louis. And I'm talking about major release film, not like the short films and like all the incredible film work that is done, commercial film work that's done in St. Louis, because that has not stopped. But that was cool. Again, another full hour of content. It was shorter because it was a pledge week. So it was more like 49, 50 minutes instead of the full hour, but still a full show, which is nerve-wracking. And then we move on to another contributed segment about Voices of Bellefontaine. I worked with Hawthorne Players many, many moons ago in a show called Our Town. Photo here. I'm gonna have to find all these photos. Why am I making this hard for myself? Yeah, it was really cool. It was really exciting. I love Our Town. It's one of my favorite plays of all time. But Hawthorne Players collaborates with Bellefontaine Cemetery and Arboretum, and I brought the writer of Voices and the cemetery chronicler of Bellefontaine on, and I interviewed them. This is another contributed segment about Voices, what it means, why it's important, and how they go about, you know, picking people to talk about. So it's really cool. That was a really cool segment. Another segment that I was absolutely blessed and honored to do was about Dia de Muertos, or Day of the Dead, for those who don't hablan español. I was super happy to do this segment, because I have kind of always resonated with Hispanic culture, Mexican culture, and the music and the colors and just everything about it is so beautiful, and I appreciate it so much. And I love to be an observer and a participant when I am allowed into the space. Guys, I don't know that I have any Hispanic heritage, but I'm not learning Spanish for no reason. Like, I love the culture. I want to be able to communicate with people in their language, in their native tongue. Love Dia de Muertos. Love, you know, I love Halloween time. This was around Halloween. It was literally the day before Halloween that this came out. But I was very happy to have it be more about the history of the celebration and what the culture actually means, and what, you know, separating the stigma of Halloween from Dia de Muertos, and separating, you know, I said stigma, but like the feeling of Halloween from Dia de Muertos. Like, it can feel macabre or morbid, but it's really beautiful. And especially as someone who's grieving, it was just really perfect for me to take that on, to do it and to do it right. Leticia and Carmen came on to talk about Dia de Muertos and their family traditions, but also like the holiday as a whole. And it was a very, very, very beautiful segment and very emotionally heavy for me in a good way, in a really, really good way. It felt really good to honor my brother in that way, celebrating him through Dia de Muertos. And my ofrenda is currently under construction. It will be finished, but it's getting there. And then I went on to do some other stuff. And we come to what is, again, oh gosh, I'm going to wait until, I'm not going to rank them. I'm not going to rank any of these that I'm talking about. Just know that there's a top 5 and I love these 5 segments and everything else is also amazing. But this segment is probably one of my favorites that I did. It's about The Wiz. So The Wiz came to St. Louis. See me pictured here, seeing it with my partner, my mom. They surprised me on the very last night with tickets to see The Wiz because I was doing a story about The Wiz. There is an exhibit that closes in a couple days. So this video will probably come out after that exhibit closes, but whatever, it's fine. But call it Through Oz. And it's like a curation of artifacts and pieces from past productions of The Wiz, current productions of The Wiz, and community engagement. And it was really cool to have the artists who created the artwork for, like the promotional artwork, community activist, community leader, and Nicole Hudson, who is a co-producer on the current touring production of The Wiz, to talk about, what it means to kind of use art and fantasy as a way to relate to reality, which is me. That's where I am in life, is using art and fantasy to relate to reality. That's what I want to do. That's where I am. Another full show. This is another Pledge Week full show. So not a full hour of content, but 40-ish minutes or so of content, and just such a fabulous story about how we can relate to The Wiz itself, specifically after a tornado, literally a tornado hit St. Louis, but also about how Black people have been doing stuff and are more relatable than anybody else really will ever accept. But really specifically about this gallery, this showing, and what these pieces and the community engagement at the gallery mean for North City. And that was really important to me to bring it back to St. Louis in the way of North City is being affected. The Fox, the gallery, is a stone's throw from where these homes, people's homes and schools and livelihoods were destroyed. And how, it can feel mismatched to be celebrating and joyous when people have suffered and are continuing to suffer, and what it meant to collaborate with these community leaders for the Ville and Invest STL to give back to the community. So using art to give back, baby, that is the priority. So that one was really, really special and important to me. And then I did back-to-back. So in my last full week, I did 2 segments. One was a contributed segment with Mike Isaacson at the Muni. We talked about revisals and how the Muni was kind of the antithesis for The Wiz being revived and being brought back to tour and brought back to Broadway with a new version, new script, some new songs, or some reworking of songs. So I got to talk with Mike about that again in a contributed segment. So I got to interview him, and that was a fabulous interview. It was so much fun. He has so much insight into the industry. So it really was one of those, okay, how do we do this? How does it actually happen segments, a process segment, which is so, I love hearing people talk about their process and talk about how they make something go from start to finish. It just, that's part of my brain. It inspires me so much. So shout out to Mike for coming on and talking to me about that. It was a really, really great segment. And then my last segment as a full-time producer was Black women die at a disproportionately higher rate than anyone else in the country during childbirth and due to pregnancy. And that number has fluctuated. Some say it has been on a decline, but it's still too high. And again, I got to bring on a panel of Black women to talk about Black issues. And these 3 women came on and talked about what we can do to make it better and what needs to happen to listening to Black women, listening to women in general when they are saying, you know, I know something is wrong. I feel something is wrong. I can tell that something is wrong. And don't, you know, don't misdiagnose, don't ignore me. Really don't ignore me is the biggest thing. Don't ignore me. I know when something's wrong with my body. I have lived in this body forever. So that was probably the most important and impactful segment that I have produced, because I know too many Black women who have had horror stories in labor, in childcare, and childbirth, and being pregnant, and going to doctor's visits, and blah, 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 and being judged and being ignored, and almost dying while giving birth or dying after giving birth. There are too many in my own personal life that I couldn't pass up on doing the story before I was gone. And so this is like the crown the final jewel in my crown of produced segments. And of course, I can't do this. I've purposefully skipped over them because I've done them, they're monthly. But I cannot do this video about my work at St. Louis Public Radio without talking about the freaking music show. So obviously, as a musician, I really gravitated toward working with my colleague Maya about this or on the new music show. And it really started with me just helping her prep for it and her kind of teaching me her process, and has developed into this, you know, position where I get to come back and help to co-produce these segments with her. And it's really exciting and it's really cool. And I love obviously talking about music. I love finding out new songs. I love that I get to like hear about artists that I've never heard of from St. Louis. It's connecting me more to the community. It's making me want to get out of my head, out of my house, and get to these events and actually support these artists, because like it can feel amorphous when you are, you know, you see that the show is going on, but you're like, oh, it's late or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's actually really making me want to get out and at least go to a couple shows a month once I have some money in my pocket. To, you know, really support these artists, because they're such amazing work. St. Louis is full of incredibly talented musicians. Everybody deserves a seat at the table. Everybody deserves a chance to say their piece and say their name and all of this. So I am so happy to be continuing to co-produce these new music segments with Maya and curate playlists for, you know, new music from St. Louis artists that you haven't heard of, or that you have heard of, but you didn't know they were putting music out or what have you. Like, that has been kind of the really, really shining achievement of this whole thing and the whole reason that I get to stick around. So I'm really happy about it. And yeah, that's it. That will be the conclusion of my work at St. Louis Public Radio. If you all want the video that is a more deep, like, process video of like how we book a segment and all of that stuff, let me know in the comments down below, and I can definitely make a video that kind of goes in depth about it. But as of right now, I'm really proud of the work that I have done and continue doing at STLPR. And just, it really has been such a life-changing experience and something that is like a dream come true, truly. And I can't wait to see what comes next and what radio work I get to do next, and hopefully some voiceover work as well. And keep your eye out for my new music, because Motions is coming sometime in the next month or so. I got to get back in the studio and finish it up. It was mostly recorded last year. It really just needs to be like mastered. So it is like barely a step away from being finished. And literally the second it's finished, I'm going to put it out shortly after that. So keep your eyes out for Motions, and keep your eyes out for my full project. I can't tell you any more about it, but I can tell you that it was created over the time that I have been off work. I've been really inspired, and Yeah, that's all. That's it. That's all you get. Thank y'all so much for watching. If you like what I am doing, if you like me, if you like my music, or you just want to support, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get a notification every single time I post a video. I post twice a month. Leave me a comment down below if you want that full process video or what you want to hear from me next. I got a bunch of ideas up here in this old noggin, and I'm trying to get them all out for you. So we shall see what comes next. And till next time, love you, mean it. Mwah. Bye.